Ever since I moved here to Vietnam over a year ago, I've truly only had one consistent in my life. One thing that kept me grounded to reality, making sure I didn't have some kind of stress over the cultural change. And that would be Mahjong. Almost every day since I started playing, I've squeezed in at least 2 matches of Mahjong on my phone. But how exactly did this happen? When I moved here, my wife didn't know Mahjong until she learned with me, a majority of her friends didn't know it, and her closer relatives, many of whom love them to death, hit many of the Asian stereotypes, don't know Mahjong either. So where did I learn it? Well, probably the same place a lot of Westerners get their first taste of the game. Specifically Kiwami 2, but I'm up to 5 now, and installing games on Steam here is really slow.
What are you doing? The race has started!
So also after I got here, my friends convinced me to pick the Yakuza series back up. I beat Kiwami 1 intermittently during 2020 and 2021, but didn't come back to the series until late 2024 after joining a Steam family with my friends who had them. And I sure appreciate them for telling me to do so, because I have really enjoyed what I have played so far. Some parts I didn't like as much, such as anything related to Tanimura and most of Yakuza 3's real story, but overall, I've enjoyed the series. I just finished Shinada's part of Yakuza 5, and unless it totally shits the bed in the next portion, that'll probably take the spot of my favorite in the series so far. However, despite knowing the mixed opinion of longtime fans towards it, I still have a really big soft spot for Kiwami 2, both for the peak story of Ryuji, Kiryu, and Kaoru, and for getting me into Mahjong. Story time. The Yakuza series has a lot of side quests. As I've played the series, I've really just done the main story, a majority of side quests, and tried the minigames for funsies. 9 of these plus spin-offs exist. I don't want to spend too long on minigames that I know return later. One story in Kiwami 2 that really stumped me is called Against All Odds. This one involves a guy in debt who needs Kiryu to win a game of Mahjong while starting with an inconceivably low amount of points. While I normally play Yakuza on a Discord call with the 2 friends watching and occasionally backseating if I do something stupid, I played this part of the game in the bedroom while my wife did some stressed out wedding planning on the bed. I really wanted to win this one, but kept losing over and over and over and over again, leading to my wife and I to start looking through the Kiwami 2 rulebook together in hopes of figuring it out. We played matches on the other tables, started getting better, yet still couldn't beat the one sub-story. Spending so much time on this. My Steam time says I put 36 hours into Kiwami 2, and I know I spent at least 7 of those in Mahjong. Later, my friends, who do not know anything about Mahjong, told me I was supposed to ignore it and come back way later with an item that gives me an instant win called a Yakuman. Just like them, I only beat it with said item, but unlike them, I caught the Mahjong bug. To ensure I don't waste more time in Kiwami 2, I installed a popular online Mahjong app on my phone called Arichi City, which I now have a fairly good rank in. My wife's got a better one in 3-player mode though. Mahjong has become a habit for me. One that I didn't find a way to talk about on the channel because it's primarily a tabletop game, and I don't know how to talk about tabletop games too well. But then I did some more research to find something crazy. A lot of Mahjong video games exist, as in so fucking many. If you have heard there are lots of Mahjong games before and thought you got the idea from that sentence, no you didn't. If you glanced at the list of Mahjong games in MAME and decided you understood, no you didn't. If you took a look at GiantBomb.com to see their list of Mahjong games at a whopping 16 pages, 11 more than they have for poker, you still don't know how many Mahjong games exist. Quite frankly, if I wanted to make a video giving Mahjong video games as thorough an analysis as I do with a single series of video games like I normally do in the past, I'd sign on to only talk about Mahjong for the next year. So instead I'm gonna do 2 things. First, give a beginner's guide to Mahjong, and then try to give a good idea of how fucking wild these games have gone, mainly with the arcade stuff. While I have many games I had to skip, I still recorded over 60 different games and tried to get a look at the more popular ones. But let's start with what Mahjong is for anyone who just doesn't know at all. Mahjong is a tile-based tabletop sport that developed in China during the mid-19th century. By the turn to the 20th century, Mahjong spread out to other parts of East and Southeast Asia. Many of those countries and even different provinces, mainly Chinese ones because it's fucking big, altered the rule set. For the most part, countries that historically felt heavy Chinese influence play Mahjong the most. That list normally includes Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, and Vietnam. Most online sources say those countries play Mahjong often, but in my experience, it's not really that popular in Vietnam. Or at least not here in Saigon where I live now. When I ask people about it, people under 40 normally respond, "Mahjong? That's for old people." Or I hear, "Oh, that's the game Chinese people play in Chinatown," if I ask an older person. Many old Chinese tabletop games are popular here, so I don't doubt that I'd find more people who play it if I kept asking, but even then, I've been playing Japanese Mahjong, so I can't guarantee that the places I go play that kind. Wikipedia claims a Vietnamese variant exists, but the Vietnamese people I see online play Japanese, and the few people I've met in person that did know Mahjong knew the Hong Kong variant. My best guess for the lack of popularity, spitballing here, Mahjong did develop across Asia during the period when France colonized Vietnam. So maybe the French rule and Vietnamese fight for independence ended up causing the game to not spread as vastly. Either way, it's still more popular here than in Europe or the USA. If I say Mahjong here, they know what I'm talking about. Well, if I say Mahjong in the US, they usually assume Mahjong Solitaire, something we're not touching at all today. Now, as I think most people understand from how many anime and games feature it, once Japan got Mahjong, they went fucking nuts for it. All of the games I plan to talk about feature the Japanese variant known as Riichi Mahjong. So from this point on, if I say anything rule related, pretend I have a footnote that says Japanese Mahjong. In terms of actually playing Mahjong, it works similar to card games like Shanghai Rummy, a favorite on both sides of my family. Players draw and discard tiles in a circle with the main goal of creating melds. In Mahjong, a meld consists of triplets and 3-tile sequences such as 3, 4, 5 of the same suit. Each player starts with 13 tiles, draws from what's called a live wall that they made at the start of the game, and discards at the end of every turn. Players want to draw a 14th tile that completes a set of 4 melds and 1 pair. Once you achieve that, as well as one other win condition called a Yaku, you win the round and gain points. If no one achieves a winning hand after the game runs out of tiles, a draw is called and points are either not traded or distributed to players that achieved tenpai, meaning 1 tile away from winning. A Japanese Mahjong set has 4 copies of 34 different tiles, totaling 136 tiles, 7 different honor tiles, and 3 suits of tiles numbered 1 through 9. Sometimes you'll see an app use the Japanese names of the suit, Sozo, Pinzu, and Manzu, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to call them bamboos, dots, and characters. Characters as in parts of the Chinese written script. Each of the 3 suits have a number 1 through 9 represented by the number of dots, number of bamboo sticks, or a peacock for bamboo 1, and which Chinese character is on the tile. I think a lot of players get scared by the Chinese characters, but it's actually a lot easier to get a hold of than you'd think. You learn 1, 2, 3, and 5 quickly since they have the same number of strokes as their number, and 4 looks like a 4-sided box, leaving you with just 6 to 9 to actually memorize. And every virtual Mahjong automatically places every tile in your hand in order. Hell, you don't even need to memorize them, just distinguish them. If you ask me to draw a 7 from memory, I'll probably get it wrong, but if a Chinese guy writes out 1 through 9 in a random order, I can pick out the 7. For the honor tiles, we have 2 types, 3 colored dragons and 4 directional winds. Unlike face cards in a card game, these don't work in a sequence. Honor tiles only work when matched with the same tile. Having 1 of each honor tile means nothing in all but one very specific circumstance that you guys don't need to worry about today. This makes holding on to honor tiles a lot riskier, but they have much bigger rewards, because if you get a triplet of any dragon, then you automatically get your Yaku. Same goes for the dominant wind and your seat wind, though that requires us to move back a little. So the most common form of Mahjong requires 4 players. Variants exist for 2 and 3 player, with most of my footage showing the less codified 2-player variant because that's what the arcade games commonly have you play. But in real life and in online games with a ranking system, you will mostly play with 4 people. When you start, the players make 4 double-decker walls of 17 tiles. Players then roll a dice to decide who goes first. Whoever has the highest number starts as the east player, while the other players just continue in a counterclockwise circle afterwards. Then, the east player re-rolls the dice to decide which 14 tiles of the wall goes to the dead wall. After this, Thus, everyone picks up their starting 13 tiles from the start of the live wall and plays as previously described. In a normal game of the most common format, the game should last 4 rounds, where the players not only draw and discard, they can also steal pieces. In Mahjong, anyone can pick up a discarded piece that completes a triplet by calling pon, or a winning hand by calling ron, and only the player after you can complete a sequence by calling chi, making it so, depending on what you wait for, poses different levels of risk. You have a lower chance of completing a straight due to someone else's discard than you do a triplet. However, you don't always want to steal, because that opens your hand up. Just having any old 4 melds and a pair in an open hand does not give you a Yaku, and if you don't have a Yaku, you can't call a winning hand. Now, I can't go over every Yaku, there's a lot. So instead, I'll just go over some to give you an idea. For a simple example, we have the Toi Toi hand. This consists purely of 4 triplets and a pair. No matter what other circumstances occur on the board, Toi Toi means you win the round. Additionally, having a triplet for a dragon gives you a Yaku. If you have any of those, the rest of your hand can do anything. Same goes for if you have a half flush, meaning all same suit with honors, or a full flush, meaning all same suit. Those Yaku, as well as some others, can happen with an open hand. However, lots require a closed hand, so make sure to check a guide if you try to play, especially because some Yaku give more points than others. Riichi Mahjong's points work with a conversion system. Everyone starts with 25,000 points, Yaku are worth certain Han, and your amount of Han dictates how many points you take from other players. In terms of knowing how much Han each Yaku is worth, I found a pretty good guide on, of all places, the Final Fantasy XIV subreddit. Running someone takes all those points from one person, while pulling the winning tile yourself, a sumo, splits the points you get between the other players. There are a lot more to go over with Han that I already wrote about, but all of that is better learned through a spreadsheet or playing it yourself, and my friend said it's cringe to have too long of a guide if I mostly talk about titty games. So we'll move over to the 2 things that make Riichi Mahjong unique: Dora and Riichi. Riichi is a mechanic where if you reach Tenpai with a closed hand, you can lock into your current 13 tiles and wager 1,000 extra points for 1 guaranteed extra Yaku, as well as a few others that become possible, adding an extra imperative to keep your hand closed. If you're really far behind, a Riichi can help with your comeback, though if you're already in the lead and have a Yaku, you might fare better passing it over. Then for Doras. So remember the dead wall from earlier? Well, it's not entirely dead. When the game begins, we flip a tile. The tile after in sequence is the Dora. So if we have this 4 dot here, then that means that the 5 dot is a Dora tile. If you have a Dora tile in your hand, it doesn't count for a Yaku, but it does give you 1 extra Han, which might not sound too great, but it's actually kind of important. Going back, pretend you have a Toi Toi hand, but you're really far behind. You can't make a comeback with the 2 Han a Toi Toi gives you, but 1 piece you pawned was a Dora piece, thus meaning you have an additional 3 Han on top of your 2, giving you enough points to turn the tide of the game. Not to mention 2 other types of Dora, so I'm not gonna mention them. This video is gonna be longer than KH3 if I talk about every fucking rule. So actual last thing, because they're fucking cool, Yakuman. These are extremely rare, totally hard to achieve win conditions that likely ends the game if you achieve one. A Yakuman gives you 32,000 points, significantly more than the starting points of 25,000. However, again, these are really hard to achieve. Like, the easiest one is probably Big 3 Dragons, which requires that you have a triplet of all 3 dragon tiles, while other ones like all greens requires you to have a full hand with only green tiles, meaning you can only have 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 bamboos or the green dragons. Again, check the list. It's insane how rare these can get. Anyways, that should be enough to get talking about the games, but as a reminder, I only talked about Japanese 4-player Mahjong in the most simple way I possibly could. I removed literally half of this part. If you have interest in Mahjong but want something easier, a lot of easier variants exist, as well as more guides online. Just don't try to play Taiwanese Mahjong. That requires a 17-tile hand to win. No fucking thank you. So a warning right now, the history of Mahjong video games is very linked to sexual elements. Of course, I want to keep my monetization, so I'm not going to show any titty, but if you're sensitive to those topics or just don't want to know what anime girls from a Mahjong game caused your favorite YouTuber to pop a stiffy, then maybe skip the rest of the video. Either points are equally valid. I'm going to try to have a little class, but let's be real, it's a funny topic, I'm not going to mince too many words. So turning Mahjong into a video game was a pretty difficult task in the early days of gaming. A player needs to make any of the calls like chi and pon, as well as discard their specific tiles in a quick fashion. If a video Mahjong game took as long as a real one, then the arcade machine might just have the same guy playing off the same quarter for way too long. Thankfully, the late 70s and early 80s represented a time for innovation in gaming. We got the Atari joystick, Nintendo's D-pad, four-sided table cabinets. The sky has no limits for something easy to use. Yeah, so a typical arcade Mahjong game looks like this. A separate letter for all 14 pieces, your various calls, and another section for games that allow betting. Besides the betting system, the very first Mahjong game, Taisen in 1981, had a similar setup to this, and it set the standard for the entirety of Mahjong's popularity in arcades. Of all the arcade Mahjong games I played, the only one lacking this setup came out on Neo Geo, an arcade board that has to use the one joystick 4-button setup. For the sake of playing on my computer, I decided not to emulate the actual straight line setup. Instead, I mapped every letter to the actual keyboard key, put the calls as numbers 1 through 5, and the bets as 6 through 8, but honestly, I never got into the betting games. It's all in Japanese, and I already had a lot of other stuff to stumble through, including language stuff. Emulating the straight line proved awkward on a keyboard, and when I see the I on the screen, my fingers naturally want to go to the I key on my keyboard, so I figured this worked best. Moving on, over 90% of the arcade Mahjong games I played used a custom 2-player rule set. You only have an east and south seat, you discard less tiles before the game ends, and usually the player begins with a very small amount of points, making games significantly shorter and lowering the sustainability of hands that require long-term waits like all triplets. Games continue until the opponent has run out of points, or just gonna get right to it, clothes. No more eluding the big interesting part, you cannot discuss arcade Mahjong without mentioning the stripping aspect of a shit ton of them. Taisen came out in 1981 and Jangu Knight, the first strip Mahjong game, came out in 1983. Sadly, no MAME dump of it, but the sequel from the following year, one of the few 3-player Mahjongs I've played, looks like this. Given how these mainly appeal to tired-ass businessmen who didn't want to go home to their lonely 2-tatami mat apartment, the stewardess and Japanese trad wife makes sense. As more Mahjong games came out, a significant number of them had stripping as their main draw, reaching their peak of popularity in the mid to late 90s as FMV sequences grew commonplace. Home ports could emulate everything else, but only the arcades, PC, and most Saturn ports had nipples out. Everything else stopped at the bra. For the sake of this video, I tried to play a lot of what I perceived as the more popular games or ones that quickly interested me. If it had a sequel, I could assume it had some popularity. I only ended up playing a few PC games though. Due to their age and only releasing in Japan, for every one I got running, I had another 3 that stopped me somewhere. With the amount of games I wanted to cover, it did not seem feasible to spend so much time setting up every PC game individually. Also, most of the PC games are either boring simulators for grandma or straight up porn games. I played pretty far into this MILFJong game and decided that I have no jokes beyond saying MILFJong, leading me to stop with the PC games. The very first home port of Mahjong I can find is sort of this game called Pi Panic on MSX. You don't actually play Mahjong in this one. You play as a little scrunko named I Don't See a Manual Online as he hammers down Mahjong pieces to make a hand. A funny little idea of a game using Mahjong tiles without the necessity to code an AI opponent. For the actual first home Mahjongs, we have the SG-1000 Mahjong by Sega and Nintendo's Famicom Mahjong, both only 1 month apart in 1983. Perhaps the start of their rivalry. Neither have anything that outstanding beyond giving people a chance to play Mahjong at home, and I guess setting the standard for every game console released in Japan to have at least one Mahjong game on it. PC Engine, original Xbox, PS1, Dreamcast, 3DO, the Game Boy fucking launched with Mahjong in Japan. I only played 2 on Super Nintendo. Mahjong Goku Tenjiku is Mahjong with a Journey to the West backdrop. The 2 most Chinese things put together, hence why it happens a few times. It has a neat theming with loads of options I couldn't read, many of which in kanji too, which I guess might be to give it more of the Chinese vibe. The other one I tried was Super Patchy Slot Mahjong. I initially thought it might fuse the two for a unique game, but it seems to just offer a double deal with a slots mode and a mahjong mode. Not anything too exciting, though for a Nintendo game, it has some odd theming. A normal mahjong match has no stripping, though I didn't play long enough to enter the VIP lounge, so correct me if it gets a little sexier. However, we still have a bunny girl who greets us in most of the hallways, except this one with a bunny old fat man with a noticeable bulge. Just way bigger than you might expect Nintendo to let slip. Besides those, I only put time into one other game on Nintendo. Aw yeah, now we're talking. A fuck ton of anime and manga-based mahjong games exist, including Neon Genesis Evangelion on the Game Boy Color, which the company just so happened to make as an asset flip of this other mahjong game based on Digikarato, an anime of equal popularity at the time that only seemed to resonate with mega weebs in the West. Both have good-looking artwork in the cutscenes, though playing the Game Boy Color games blown up to my computer monitor led to the actual mahjong looking really crusty. I had to push my face super close to the monitor to see what piece had what. The exact opposite of the intended Game Boy in the hand experience of the system. It kinda sucks. I really enjoy myself mahjong and Neon Genesis Evangelion, so I wish I had another way to fuse the two. Oh, that's right, there's fucking more of these. We also have an Evangelion Gainax crossover game for Saturn, PS1, and PC. The PC version has stripping, but only crosses over with Gunbuster. Again, I only played this one for a short time, mainly to get what I wanted before stopping.
This one's for Mami Misato.
Pretty much every anime and manga about mahjong had a mahjong video game like Gambler Densetsu Tetsuya and Akagi, but if I had to pick just one more non-sexual anime-based one to show, I gotta show Azumanga Daioh Mahjong on PS1. Not only is it based on an anime where I don't ever recall mahjong showing up, it has some of the strangest rules ever put to one of these. A winning hand has 9 pieces that rely more on what characters you see instead of the real numbers shown. I did not understand what happened since it differed from mahjong so much. I only stuck through it to see tiny 3D Chio push the tiles around. Anyways, from here on, we're doing the actual strip games. I wanted to find the right way to further categorize them. I could do it with a silly stipulation like how you play it, year of release, difficulty, or company that made it. None of those categories really matter. We know why you came, and it's because of the girls. So I've separated these into 3 very uneven categories based on the type of girls they have. Semi-realistic pixel girls, anime waifus, and straight-up photos or videos of real-ass women. In general, the anime girl ones were the highest quality, the semi-realistic ones were in between, and the ones with photos just got fucking weird. Mahjong Erotica Golf, a title that sounds AI generated to appeal to 54-year-old overworked uncles who fear a divorce paper every time they go home. With a title like that, I wondered if I might see a mix of golf gameplay somewhere. Though sadly, we just get a normal Mahjong game with a golf theme. Plus, really awkward photos of the girls. During a match, their faces show up in front of a green background, giving a green screen vibe, even though I get the feeling they wanted to evoke a golf course vibe. Then, a pretty common mechanic, all of the sexy scenes have you mash the N key to peep through a keyhole in hopes of seeing nipple. Just all around old pervert coded. Personally, I want to feel like a young pervert. Mahjong Private Teacher, a game where you and this really snappy Mahjong teacher go a few rounds together. She's oddly expressive as far as these real girl games go, with a worried face, smooth snap, and multiple dresses. Awkwardly, the first sexy scene has her wearing Hanna-Barbera pajamas, and that turned me off. A 4-player one I tried, Mahjong 4-Piece Amasio, didn't give me much new, but it's the only one I played that shows you nipple for losing, so it has that going for it. For the photo games I spent the longest on, I guess it was Sexy Idol Mahjong Fashion Monogatari for PC Engine CD. No full stripping in this one, but it had a presentation style that kept me interested. You walk around a board game style map passing by bunny girls, dominatrixes, and call girls while trying to build up points for sexy photos through Mahjong matches and quizzes. Quizzes where you have to decide which of of these represent a winning hand. Thankfully, no real words so I could follow along. Despite the cartoony overworld, the girls you played with are clearly digitized real actresses, or maybe very carefully redrawn as pixels. Some photos cost more than others, so I assume maybe I might get something a little more hee-hee for 100 points. After all, the overworld has girls in hot springs, and I spent a very long time against this bunny that may or may not show nipple. I don't know, I'm gonna put the censor on that. But it turns out even 100 points only grants you a very tame image. Honestly, the games with real women didn't keep me focused that long. I figured the Bubballs and OG-sans in arcades forked over a lot of quarters, especially when I'd assume some of these have real AV actresses, but any of those girls' acting careers are at my modern fingertips if I cared to look hard enough. Moving into the semi-realistic girls, it seems like I recorded less of these than I played. I know I found these the least interesting, so it doesn't surprise me. Probably due to how awkward the girls can look. Sometimes they focus so much on the detail like in Dynax's Mahjong Campus Hunter, or realistic besides big anime eyes like in Mahjong Fantastic Love by the same company. These two also both made the weird choice to have you play on top of the girls' faces, which just makes it feel a little creepy. In post, I'll flash in more footage of this type because I know I played more than I have recorded, especially by the company Nichibutsu. I did not have the time to check that company's history, but they pumped out Mahjong games faster than you could pump it to them, both in the arcades and on console. So many of their games did the semi-realistic look, and I kinda recall turning them off the moment I realized it didn't have my Bishoujo waifu girls. Right now you can see whichever one I thought looked the most awkward on screen. And now, probably the longest part of the video, I want to get to the interesting stuff. The ones with anime girls. As early as the 8-bit games, lots of these chose to base the girls on popular anime styles of the time. Characters have looks that you might see in Ranma, Macross, or City Hunter. Around the early 90s, the Mahjong games with multiple entries started to form, usually with styles more unique to them. And if we just mean unique looking, then Galjan for Sega Saturn beats out a lot of other games. Not exactly for a good reason. As a reminder, while every other console censored Mahjong games, Sega Saturn let them show nipples for a few years. So if any Saturn owners wanted to see rotoscaped sexy stripping, then remove the second last word for Galjan. I don't think sexy describes gal janky. Okay, not the wackiest animation of all time, just like the body moves very realistically, while they made the faces too cartoonish. Everything on a technical level looks fine besides that. Except upcoming theme here, the Final Girl's difficulty got overtuned to a crazy level. In the arcades, lots of these Mahjong games made it so the girls could do stuff that occurs very rarely in real life. As in, I've had matches where they get 6 and up on back to back. For Galjan, the first two took me about 40 minutes, while I spent another 40 just attempting Girl 3. Given that I played Galjan first of the Saturn games, I decided to move on. That's right, I don't care how you move those hips, ACAB includes you too, Blondie. Without a doubt, Super Real Mahjong is the most popular of any Mahjong game. During the peak of popularity, it had 7 main entries, plus lots of spin-offs. Now, a few Mahjong games, I couldn't figure out what fucking main key started them, including the first 3, which didn't matter too much. 2 and 3 have uncensored Saturn ports, and the first one doesn't have girls in it. So who even gives a shit? Not even the Switch collection with all of them includes the first game. So I actually knew about this series for a while, even before I started playing Mahjong. A few years back, I forced my friend to watch the 2 Super Real Mahjong OVAs with me because I had them from some archive.org download with a bunch of other OVAs. The first one felt like watching dating profile videos of the 3 girls from Super Real Mahjong 2 and 3, while the second one had the same 3 girls isekai'd to a world where Mahjong tiles controlled everything, and they had to save the land from a tyrant. OVA 1 had not a single mention of Mahjong to my recollection, while the second made everything Mahjong and bikini armor girls with swords. Frankly, I wish the later games got OVAs too, because they got higher quality as they went on. 2 and 3 have, while good for the time, somewhat stilted sprite stripping. 4 updated them to look up to snuff with anime cells, while 5 onwards moved to having full motion video with real backgrounds and scenarios for the girls. The first 4 vaguely have a story of just visiting girls who like Mahjong. 5 makes it clear that the girls want to make a Mahjong club with the protagonist. 6, according to Visual Novel Database, is about choosing one Mahjong master's apprentice as a bride, and 7 sees the protagonist on a vacation to a small home where he plays Mahjong with 2 sisters, their teacher, and I think their mom? This animation quality and backstory led to the characters gaining popularity. Super Real Mahjong 5, while ludicrously difficult, has a tomboy that I guess Dojin creators really liked. 6 features an American who strips real quickly, and 7's got the sexy teacher. Actually, 7 lets you pick one of the girls as your main squeeze, and if you pick anyone but the girl-fail teacher, you are objectively wrong. SRM nails the fantasy part of these strip games. Everyone feels like a high school boy's dream girl. However, I do have one very big gripe, and that's the difficulty. As I said, every arcade mahjong game has wild difficulty. As an arcade game, they needed players to put quarters back in as fast as possible. Most strip mahjong games require the player to win 3 or 4 times to get the final CG, with a lot of them adding the extra win option where you view everything back to back by bringing their points to 0. I think having both makes the games inclusive to both players who want to rapid fire small hands and those that try to hold out for hands with big Han, equalizing things a little bit with how little points you start with. Super Real Mahjong does not do that. The girls have unlimited points while you start with 1,000. You only win after taking all of their clothes off. And in Super Real Mahjong, if the girl wins a hand, she puts one piece of clothes back on, meaning that you need to win 4 hands in a row to get past one girl. Look, if you thought Shao Kahn kicked your ass, then you have no chance against Coyote. I spent, no joke here, an hour just trying to get her clothes off. Back-to-back high hands with her calling sumo one turn after her Richi. If I want an Asian girl to not strip for me, guess what? I'll go to my fucking bedroom. Anyways, besides 7, none of the Saturn ports have censorship and they have difficulty options, though I could not feel much of a difference when I tested it. So basically, while I like Super Real Mahjong, I don't recommend it as a start for arcade mahjong because of the complete lack of leniency. Instead, maybe try Idol Janshi Tsuchipai has you play as Misaki Kyoko, a loser arcade employee who can transform into a Richi stick-wielding superhero. I skipped the first one on Super Nintendo for reasons you can probably figure out, but the second release on Saturn really impressed me. It has very bright graphics and sprite work, better than lots of games of the era. In this one, Kyoko goes around recruiting other transforming girls to help her stop an evil demon lady. However, you need to transform them as well by gaining points in this panel matching game after each mahjong hand. How many attempts to flip depends on how much Han you racked up in the prior round, adding a new layer of strategy where you might not want to take an opponent down too fast, because then you clear all the panels instantly, a problem you want to avoid since you need everyone to transform for the true ending. For every transformed girl, you also get bonus assistance for your current match, making Tsuchipai one of the easier mahjong games. Now, I didn't play Tsuchipai 3 and 4, but from my experience, the only gripe I have is that the first game had better character designs in my opinion, and I wish they had bigger roles in the second one, especially the girl in the Chi-Pao, one of my weaknesses that these mahjong games have a lot of. Super Real Mahjong definitely has the more grounded, realistic fantasy scenario, while Tsuchipai appeals to anyone starting out or wants a game more silly. For an underrated favorite of mine, we have Lovely Pop Mahjong. This duo sees you try to strip off the clothes of famous girls with the assistance of their shared lady manager. Difficulty-wise, these go somewhere in the middle, in part due to the large number of items you can buy in between games to let you swap tiles or guarantee a sumo after reaching. Those are common in lots of what we talked about already, not including Super Real Mahjong. While I appreciate the real animation for the girls in the first one and how you meet different types of idols like a DJ, an actress, or a traditional nightlife singer, I couldn't help but look back at the manager. She has significantly more charm than the other 4 real girls in Lovely Pop 1, and substantially more character than anyone in the second. They wanted to make the new girls in the second game more realistic with natural hair colors, which I think made me forget them quickly. But alternatively, they upped the charm on Mane-chan. She cheers for you in both a cheerleading outfit and my weakness, she manages the shop, fights with some loser between matches, and she performs all the special moves like a bazooka to reveal more Han. She is just absolutely brimming with character. I couldn't care less about the other girls stripping off for me. I wanted to face off against her, and thankfully, the second one delivered for me. Another difficulty jump. As a bonus at the very end, you need to win against Mane-chan in a 1-round match. She begins with 1,500 points, meaning you only need 2 Han to win. Yet the AI still does a lot of bullshit. She constantly immediately called Ron at the same time I did Arichi, never needed to open her hand, and just all the bullshit you expect from a bullshit ass fucking computer opponent. But I knew I wasn't giving up here, so I persevered through all of it, got tons of points to buy items so I could get 1 titty PNG. Now, I do have 2 more long anime girl series to talk about. Let's get through a random assortment that I still have in my spreadsheet. Love Mahjong 2 was the only Mahjong game I played on PS2. By this point, console manufacturers had pretty strict rules about nudity, so even with the sexy beachfronts, I knew not to expect much, though maybe I could get the same level of teasing that Dead or Alive gives. Truly, I don't know if it does because this game fucking dragged. So many goddamn menus and tutorials with awkward 3D girls, and then the actual Mahjong game takes an eternity. You just sit there as she slowly picks up a Mahjong tile and then puts it back down. I think I get why the arcade games have such a fast pace. No one can keep a bone up this long without material. No way can something get slower than this. I stand corrected. Cebu Island 96 easily wins for the worst Mahjong game I played for this video. It has real girls on the beach during the intro, followed by a normal black title screen with the game's name. Hit start to experience a Mahjong game against 3 very triangular 3D girls that force you to watch every single movement. Love Mahjong 2 only made you watch 1 slow 3D girl. Cebu Island 96 makes you watch 3 significantly less sexy blow-up dolls make moves. Varying by number of ties or the East player winning, a Mahjong game in Ricci City, an app where I go up against real human people, averages for me about 20 minutes. 4-player Mahjong is an inherently slow game. One hand, which ended in a draw, lasted 7 minutes in Cebu Island 96. If I'm playing virtual Mahjong with computers, I kinda want the game to go quickly. My Fair Lady Virtual Mahjong 2 looks like a pretty normal Mahjong simulator during Mahjong, even featuring a full 4 players. Then you finish a match and witness this. Disco Mahjong, I dug the vibes on this one. If you grew interested in the game due to Yakuza, you may want to try this. It has all the hallmarks I've already talked about with one of the best vibes, and girls with more confidence, which I kinda like after most of them overplay the reluctance that seems popular in Japanese AV films. Don't forget kids, consent is sexy. Mahjong Sailor Wars. Yeah, it's Sailor Moon alright. Mahjong Hyper Reaction 1 and 2. In the first one, go up against 2 sisters that satiate my fantasies. First you face the pink-haired tomboy that decimated me for a very long time, then the older, cool, collected sister with a fucking bopping theme song. I don't know, dudes. I assume most straight women left by now. A few of these games suddenly pull up with bangers. Sucks that no one cares about these games, so none of the soundtracks get ripped properly. Thankfully, this one had an extra content adding Saturn port with an OST rip. But One-san here is treating me like human garbage, as I likely am, so I stopped after beating her in the arcade version. Hyper Reaction 2 is maybe the most impressive graphically of all the games I played. It takes place in a fancy upper-class establishment with the scenarios in the background, as in, the video plays underneath the Mahjong games, leading to less jarring jumps between the stripping and playing. Actually, backgrounds change with each cloth removal. So the first more traditional girl got really shy, the aloof older girl was confident, and I turned off the game when the third girl walked out. Yeah, just like anime, we have a lot of questionably aged characters, and despite how much anime I've watched, some of these go a little far even for me. Whoa, that's a year to place on the character. That better mean born in 1916.
Roman, you have the ability to turn these games off whenever you want, my man.
Ryusei Junshi Kirada Star. It has cute sprite work for the main characters and reminds me of Mischief Makers, the one Toho Mahjong I played.
Yeah, you think there's only one Toho Mahjong game, you fucking
I didn't
dumbass?
think so. Returning to the big series, first with Idol Mahjong Final Romance by Video System. These four have some oddities. Similar to Super Real Mahjong 1, Final Romance got kinda thrown in the trash by the company due to having realistic girls instead of the anime girls of the next three. Not a single port, and I gotta admit, I also stopped early. 2 changed to having anime girls with designs leaning more on the cool bishoujo side. While they have detail, it's clear these are static images with moving mouths. However, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and if a baddie asks me to talk, then she's getting an essay. Idol Romance R, the third game that awkwardly doesn't have a number, has FMV sequences for the girls, but changes the setting to be at a school with, too moe of an art style for me. I'd rather that for my non-sexy anime. Additionally, the Final Romance games, while having items and score, is one of the ones where the girls get their clothes back if you lose. So once this gymnast girl, something I can't fantasize about coming from a family of gymnasts, walled me, I gave up with R. Then Final Romance 4 gets a lot more absurd. Interestingly enough, FR4 has a totally different experience between the arcade and Saturn version. In the arcade, you go through each girl one at a time, besides this girl who has a penguin helper, to eventually beat the story and face off against this girl wearing my weakness. Afterwards, you pick which girl becomes Miss Final Romance. Something that might happen in the other 3, but I didn't beat those. If you pick anyone but the final 2, I question your choices in life. I for sure like the designs in this one more than the prior 2, besides the young girl you fight third. These games are for adults, why do you keep doing this? On Saturn, they add in extra girls, a choice on who to fight when, and overworld RPG shops. Really, it should provide the best way to play, except it also censors the titties. Yeah, I don't know what happened with some of these. Maybe Japan strengthened some laws because some grandma who used to be Chinese accidentally bought a sexy mahjong game when she wanted to bond with her grandson. If you have a good enough imagination to fill in, or rather erase, the blanks, then I'd say go for the Saturn port. Moving on, I've saved the best for last, the Mahjong games by Saikyo. I think a few of you shmup boys might recognize the name for their arcade games that still get re-releases like Dragon Blaze and Gunbird 2, or for the funny guys, they made the Street Fighter shmup spin-off where Vega looked like this. While I'd probably call them a shmup studio before anything else, they also had a lot of Mahjong, mainly their Taisen Hot Gimmick series. Unlike the other Mahjong games where girls strip after you win, this one has you pick a punishment for them after they lose 3 times or all of their points. You could flip their skirt, force them to clean the floor in a position that makes their bra come off, suffer the effects of cloth destroying acid, mobile phone zips their bra off, a bunch of twigs rip their bra off like a weight, penguins pull their bra up, library card pulls a bra down. A lot of bras come off in this series, but there's creative stuff too. I mean, this girl drew her yaoi horse. Without a doubt, Hot Gimmick has my favorite art of any of the series. It lacks much movement, but it more than makes up for it with the quality. The first and fourth entries have art entirely by Jun Tsukasa, who I've been a fan of for a while. Tsukasa has an art style that works really well for the limited movement shown here. Their skin tones look realistic, while the facial features and body proportions are clearly still following anime rules. Plus, they just have some depraved ideas, and we like that in these parts. Give me that Mahjong dominatrix and Chuni nurse. Not to say 2 and 3 have bad art, I liked those too, they just have multiple artists on them. Gimmick 2, besides a secret boss by Renge Murata I couldn't unlock, has a very comic booky vibe for everyone, which makes sense when you see that the full title is Taisen Hot Gimmick Kairakuten, and all of these artists frequently were published in the hentai magazine Comic Kairakuten. I think my favorites are the robot because she's funny, the penguin hater with colors that remind me of Yuffie, and the teacher with the big bazongas. Besides one, I didn't know any of the artists from Hot Gimmick 2. Something I can't say for Hot Gimmick 3, especially when Hot Gimmick 3 clearly placed the artist names in Latin script right by their girl. Meaning I can confidently say I recognized more than I should ever admit to all but my closest confidants. Hisatoshi and Mogudan have the best too. Saikyo made 2 other Mahjong games, one of which included a Capcom crossover. Net Taisen Gimmick Capcom and Saikyo All-Stars released on Dreamcast after all 4 of the Hot Gimmicks. It may sound like a shitpost, but truthfully, it's not that out of left field. With all the guest artists on 2 and 3 plus secret opponents against their shmup characters I didn't didn't unlock, Hot Gimmick already had an amateur collaboration vibe. Each arcade game felt like a Kamaket Dojin put into arcade mahjong form. Net Gimmick with Capcom feels like a shitty Dojin in game form. It came out on Dreamcast with Capcom characters. I knew I wasn't going to see Ryu's nipples, but could have done more. We just get the mahjong gameplay from before with PNGs of Street Fighter Alpha 3 and Psycho characters during gameplay. No punishment games or even special art after a match. My guess is that Psycho and Capcom wanted to sell this mainly on the online aspect. Given the Dreamcast's innovation with online play, this might be the first online mahjong, but I didn't look that hard. There's probably something on PC. Since Capcom wouldn't allow the funny bits on the game, instead I must turn back to Dojin circles of the late 90s. I made a lot of Street Fighter work, it doesn't take long to find. Thankfully, Psycho had one more game afterwards, G-Taste, another using the gameplay from Hot Gimmick with punishments at the end. Only now, it features an oddly fleshed out narrative. Instead of a faceless main character, we follow this woman in a fancy suit as she punishes other skinny women with designs that look more ripped from a manga. Not in a, whoa, look at this cool manga art type way, but in that, yeah, this looks easy to draw over and over kind of way. Because they based G-Taste Arcade on a very artsy erotic lesbian manga of the same name. And honestly, I think that's the perfect way to end the video. Sadly, mahjong games get tossed aside pretty easily by even the most gung-ho game preservationists in North America. I didn't fact check this. I read that one guy bought some rare arcade boards just to smash them in protest to MAME clogging the list with mahjong, which I find fucking ridiculous. While often cheaply put together, these mahjong games have a deep history representing the hard work of small game developers that only had one outlet for getting their kinks in the arcade. I'm sure lots of tired office workers and sneaky high school students in Japan look at these fondly. Mahjong games now either go full fucking cheap hentai route on PC, or casual to semi-casual on mobile. It's for that reason I felt compelled to make this video about these games. Well, that's how I could end. I'm gonna be real, I just want an excuse to talk about borderline eroge on YouTube. See you later, everyone!